What up, this is Patrick Hayes, welcome to my YouTube channel. And in this video, I want to talk to you about refining your palate. And when I say refining your palate, I don't just mean the palate of taste, like a wine taster, but I mean refining your palate on all dimensions. So this is your palate for emotion, your emotional palate. This is also your palate for health, for clarity, for clean signal, wherever that signal could be coming from. I want to talk about the importance of refining your palate and cleaning your filter system so that you can perceive things clearly and get a measure for the quality of what you're intaking clearly as a means for making sure you are an agent of cure for the planet. And what do I mean by cure? You are an agent of connection back to our natural self as opposed to an agent of disconnection. What I mean is getting connected back to the natural Gaian impulse, the impulse of nature, the natural world. The reason why we call nature, nature, and also our true nature, nature, and the reason why it's the same word is because ultimately it's the same thing. Our nature is in tune with nature. And when we're disconnected from nature, from the Gaian program, as I like to describe it, then we're actually disconnected from our true self. So what is this Gaian program? And how does this have anything to do with your palate and refining your palate? Well, I had to break it down a little bit. So the Gaian program is you could think of it in terms, I'm going to use a light technological metaphor, though technological metaphors oftentimes aren't actually even appropriate when we're talking about like humanity and mind and spirituality, but sometimes it can still convey a point that's necessary. So the Gaian program, you can think of it as like a source code coming from Gaia. And this source code, embedded in this source code, are the codes necessary for humanity to evolve. In fact, that's just part of the entire organic matrix system. The way this entire natural world has been coded and set up is as a cradle and an evolutionary steward for humanity to evolve. And if you look at any of the scientists that have ever innovated different the technologies that are in alignment with nature, these are the most divine inventions that have came across our plate. So people like Buckminster Fuller, right? Nassim Haramein, right? Some of these new scientists, Dan Winter, right? All of these scientists understand nature, right? And because they understand nature, they actually learn from nature how to create. In other words, their inventions, how they're expressing themselves, how they're moving forward is an extension of nature. So it's in alignment with their true nature because we are made of nature, right? We're made of the four elements: earth, air, water, fire, right? So what has happened is that this code, this divine nature code that we stay in tune with by living in nature, by drinking clean water that contains the source code of Gaia, by eating clean food that contains the source code of Gaia, by breathing clean air that contains the source code of Gaia, by having divine relationship with the sun and fire, and the plasma interaction that happens between our pineal gland when we look at fire or we sun gaze. And I'll get even deeper into fire, but this connection that we have contains the source code of Gaia. And because of that, when we're engaging with the elements in a healthy way, we contain the source code of Gaia, which means we contain our true nature within us. We're in sync with our true nature. Now, when we get out of sync with our true nature, then we don't operate in relation to the world, to nature, to other humans, in a way that's in alignment with our true nature. And therefore, we create a lot of asymmetrical, distorted, destructive systems and habits and ways of being in the world. And we can see the result of this, right? So when we look back, what is going on with these different elements, right? Look at the kind of quality of water that people are drinking on a regular basis. Is this clean water? No, it's not. People are drinking crap water. And so this Gaian source code that's supposed to keep us connected is actually not keeping us connected. It's, in a sense, the water's been weaponized or the water's been distorted. Right? And so what happens is that scrambles the source code within us and it separates us from the natural world. Therefore, when we start operating from that level of consciousness, we start operating out of sync with the Gaian program. And then you look at the matrix world, or whatever you want to say, the synthetic program, that is all of the different expressions and inventions and infrastructure systems that are set up that are out of alignment with the Gaian program, right? And you can see all of them because these are the ones that directly oppose nature. These are the ones that extract nature, extract natural resources, and deplete the world, or the Mother Earth, the planet, in order to create an expression of an idea that serves some sort of ego purpose or serves some sort of disconnected, suboptimal idea for some sort of modern innovation or invention to create, whatever it is, whether it's, I don't know, helicopters or airplanes or combustion engines or nuclear power plants, whatever it is. And so we can see that so much of what has been created through technology and through the way that we live and just across the board has been done out of sync with nature. And this is obvious, everyone knows this, right? But what people don't necessarily think about is how in sync it could be if we operated as extensions of nature by truly understanding nature, by truly embedding ourselves into it. Again, like all of the great scientists that were in alignment over the ages, they studied nature to learn what they learned, right? And if you study it deep enough, you can see how to, in a sense, like biomimic or be in alignment with nature so that your expression furthers the goals of Gaia. You can think of it like that, right? We become extensions of nature. So instead of disrupting the planet, we actually accelerate the natural world's agendas. And that's actually our true nature too. So it falls fully in alignment. So when we start acting in that way, we start actually unveiling more of our true selves, start stepping into more of our true selves because we're in alignment with our true nature and expressing that. And I could go off about how that looks, but the point that I'm trying to make here is that how do we get back in tune with that? Because if we're not on the pulse of what the Gaian pulse is, then we're going to continue down the path of destruction because we're actually not getting that source code, right? So earth, air, water, fire. We got these 4 elements, right? And this is where the palate starts becoming really, really important. And what I mean by palate is our ability to sense the quality of everything that we're ingesting. So we have earth, air, water, and fire. The water, like I said, has been polluted, right? So there's distortion codes within it. If you go to the right spring, you can get the Gaian code from the water because it's coming directly out of the earth. It's been cleansed. It's been programmed with the Gaian program, with the Gaian code. And when you drink that water, you will have an amazing experience because of that. For anybody that likes to go and collect their own spring water, they know what I'm talking about. So we have the water. We have air. Same thing with the air, been highly polluted, right? We have food. And food, we obviously know, has been weaponized and poisoned. So same issue with the food. It's taking people, it's disconnecting them from their natural source code. But there's solutions for these things, right? We can grow our own food, right? We can install a filter, air filter in our house, right? We can spend time in highly wooded areas so that we get better air quality, right? So there's different things that we can do here. Now, fire. Fire is probably one of the most interesting things to delve into when we start thinking about the 4 elements. Because what fire is really connected to is it's connected to media, it's connected to our ideas, and it's especially connected to the stories that we tell ourselves about who we are and what our purpose is. Okay? And this element is powerful. Fire is a powerful element. But the way that this element has been corrupted, and this is probably one of the cornerstones of what I want to bring across here in regards to the importance for a refinement of your palate so that you can be able to clearly acknowledge and see the quality of the fire element that you're ingesting so that we make sure that we only spread high quality signal to other people. The fire element is, think about this, in ancient times, where did we learn about who we are and what our purpose was? We learned it sitting around the fire with the elders. And the elders would tell us the stories of the ancestors. They would tell us where we came from, what star system we came from, what our purpose was, what we're doing here, what it means to be a human, how to stay connected to the earth, all the different parables and all the different stories that were told. They were told around the fire. The fire has been a powerful connection point for storytelling ever since time immemorable, right? So this is very important to remember, because what has happened to that dynamic, sitting around the fire and sharing stories about where we come from and what we truly are? Well, over time, eventually that fire got replaced with the radio, and eventually that radio got replaced with a television. And eventually that story that we were learning that connected us to all of our ancestry, to our lineage, about who we were, that story got interrupted and it got replaced with a distorted signal. Same thing that happened to all the other elements, but this one's happening on the psychological level, and this one's happening on a technological level. And so you can even see the similarities between fire, this iridescent, dancing, colorful display of plasma that is, flickering. It draws the attention of your eye. It's very interesting, right? This has been replaced with blinking lights in computers that are in televisions that are telling us stories about where we came from and who we are. But we're disconnected from our actual lineage, from the truth of what we truly are. And we've been sold a story that's extremely disempowering. And we know this, right? So anyone that's watching this knows this. The media has programmed us in negative ways. But what's interesting about this is that this fire element, right? This fire element has been replaced, so it's been distorted. And so all of these things we're ingesting, the air, the water, the earth, and the fire, they've been weaponized. So how do we get back in touch with the Gaian program? And in order to do that, we have to get back in touch with those elements, the pure aspects of those elements, right? So we need to figure out how to get clean water in us. We need to figure out how to breathe clean air. We need to figure out how to eat clean food. And we need to figure out how to make sure that the information that we're taking in about the stories of who we are, the beliefs that we're building about our identity, needs to be in alignment with our true nature, with the Gaian program. Because if we're given a false premise, then we're going to build on a false premise. And that's what we've been doing for so long that everything is collapsing, right? It's not working. It's chaos. And we know this. So getting back to the true Gaian program, the reason why I stress this so much is because there's so many people out there that have enough of their true essence within themselves, enough true heart compass, that they can see that we're going in a direction, or that there's all these opportunities to go in a positive direction, but we're not necessarily taking them, and things are in chaos, and people want to be of service. They want to help, right? There's a lot of people that want to help. But in order to actually really be of service, you have to get that Gaian code in you, because that is the source of our true nature. That's the source of our truth, right? And if we're not operating in a synthesized way, in an interconnected way with the Gaian pulse, with our true nature, then we're not going to actually be able to bring the transmission across that will actually have the juice and the frequency to guide us to that timeline, right? So if we're still in the city, drinking city water, immersed in all the Wi-Fi fields, right? We're not breathing good air. We're not eating good food. And we're taking in a bunch of content that has low quality signal that's distorting our perceptions about ourselves. We can have all the good aspirations in the world, but we're not actually connected to the truth enough to take us out of the stuck spot that we're in. So, how do we cleanse our filter system so that we can actually have a palate that's refined enough to be able to discern healthy signal from distorted signal? And this is absolutely necessary. How do we discern healthy signal from distorted signal? Well, we do that by refining our palate. They talk about, there were different slave cultures that fell in love is a funny word. Different slave cultures that started to really develop a taste for slave food. And the way it's described is like they developed a taste for slop. So then even after they weren't slaves anymore, they would still eat slave food because they developed a palate for it, right? And this is the issue with a lot of the collective consciousness, is we've developed a palate for slop. People can't taste the difference, or they don't notice the difference between good water or bad water. And they'll just drink tap water, And same thing with food, same thing with the air. People can't necessarily tell the difference, and especially with the fire element. People can't tell the difference between a piece of media that is really low vibe and destructive versus a really high vibe media, or they're not even attracted to high vibe media because they've developed this kind of addictive relationship with the low vibrational content. All right? So how do you develop your palate? You do it by cleansing your palate. This is something that, in a very straightforward way, I did when I stopped eating a bunch of crap food, right? So a long time ago, I went completely organic, and I only ate natural foods, and I didn't put a lot of like extra additive flavors, or especially anything that was synthetic on there, synthetic flavors or anything like that. And what happened is it tasted really bland. And I was like, yeah, this health food stuff is really bland. And a lot of people might actually have that same experience where they're like, yeah, health food it's pretty gross. It like doesn't taste like anything. But what happened was, over a period of time, my taste buds changed. And all of a sudden I started being able to taste the nourishment in the food that I was eating. And I started being able to actually taste all the flavors. And then that, so-called bland food, actually, it wasn't bland anymore. It was because I refined my palate. I developed a more sensitive palate. The problem is I was eating all this food that had so much weird chemical additives in it that it desensitized my palate. It had blown away my taste buds so they couldn't actually taste appropriately. It had scrambled my senses. I couldn't tell what was healthy and what wasn't. And then, once I was able to bring my palate back online and have a refined palate, then when I ate some of these other foods that had weird, flavor additives in them, it tasted like the chemicals that were actually in them. I could taste the chemicals. It was like, oh, this is gross. It was obvious. Same thing with like colognes, right? I used to like the smell of cologne, but then when I started only using essential oils and got away from colognes, after a few months, then I would smell a cologne and I would smell the chemicals that were in it. But see, I was so immersed in it for so long that I couldn't tell the difference. And this is what's happened across the spectrum of all these different things. I just had a conversation with, a landlord about the water in the house. And the landlord had no distinction, couldn't make a distinction between their water and higher quality water. In other words, they didn't smell anything or taste anything wrong with the water. They had no problem with it, right? But it's because they've been so immersed in it for so long that they can't tell the difference, right? So refining your palate is essentially like cleansing. You have to cleanse yourself on all these different levels. And in cleansing yourself, you refine your palate. And in refining your palate, it becomes obvious what's in sync with your true nature and what's out of sync with your true nature, right? But you have to extract yourself enough from the barrage of all the different sensory inputs in order to actually get to a baseline of clarity. And then from that baseline of clarity, it becomes obvious. All right? And so I always tell somebody when they're trying to change their diet, they want to change their diet and they want to stop getting cravings for all these unhealthy foods. It's like, well, give it a couple months. If you eat really, really clean, all organic, really clean, ideally if you're getting it off a farm and you know the people, you drink really, really clean water, you do that for a couple months, your body resets. And then this natural, innate intuition for what is healthy for you and what isn't comes back online. Because all this stuff has been weaponized to the point that it scrambles our senses. And especially so when it comes to the media that we ingest in regards to social media and movies and all these different things, TV shows, all this stuff. This has totally scrambled our senses. You probably remember at a certain age when you were really young and you watched a particular show and the vibe felt really weird. Maybe it like scared you. Maybe it was like some horror thing and it felt wrong. And you knew that it felt wrong. You probably ran away or hid. It was like, and it gave you nightmares, right? Well, there was something wrong with that. And you knew that intuitively as a kid. That's why you ran away from it. But then somehow we get looped back into this and programmed. And then you have people that have developed a taste for slop that like to go spend a bunch of money to sit inside a movie theater and have some like fucked up ghoul goblin thing scare the shit out of them, right? And they actually pay to get the shit scared out of them. And so where's your emotional palate there? I mean, feel into the frequencies of how that's making you feel when you go through that process. Is that actually something that feels like it's in alignment with your true nature? No. It's very obvious when you ask yourself from that direction, right, about it. So, cleansing our palate. Super important because whether we're going to be an agent for connection or an agent for separation, we're going to have to know how to navigate. We're going to have to know which direction to move towards. And in order to do that, we have to have clear sensory inputs. We have to have a clear, refined emotional palette. So we know what energies we can entertain in a way that are uplifting and helpful and which ones we can't. Now, this doesn't mean that you bury your head in the sand, right? I mean, it may be important that we need to explore different media outlets that are talking about things that are maybe even coming from low vibrational spaces. But there's a difference between consuming that content versus researching that content. And you could think of it in terms like, I can learn a lot about the ingredients that are in McDonald's food. I can do a lot of research on that, but that doesn't, and I can learn a lot about the nature of what it is without having to consume it and take the destructive source code in myself. And in doing that, I become educated about it and capable of being able to navigate through that realm without getting sucked into it. And I remain not being ignorant about it at the same time. We have to be on it right now, right? So we need to refine our palate. So how can we do that? We can do nature bathing. We can maybe take, 10 days or 30 days or just go camping for a long period of time. Get really, really good quality air, food, and water, right? Refine ourselves. You'd be amazed at how much more you'll come online if you actually do like a distortion signal fast. Take yourself out of the city. Drink good water. It's so basic. Eat good food, really high quality food, good water, right? Breathe good air. And stop watching destructive media. Only things that are truly enlightening and truly inspiring. At that point, you'll resonate with a certain frequency that's in alignment with your truth, and you will feel it. It'll be like an awakening for you. You will feel it, right? And when you feel that signal, there you go. Okay, there's your reference point. Now, from this reference point, when you start noticing distorted signal coming in through any of these angles, any of these elements, you feel the distorted signal coming in, then you have the reference point to discern that. And then you can, make the appropriate action, which is to either not consume it, but observe it and learn more about it from that direction. Or especially when it comes to things like the air, water, and food, it's like you just don't take it in anymore. You don't accidentally forget and drink some tap water. It doesn't happen because you have that refined palate. So this is essentially what I just wanted to share with you, is refining our palate and the importance of that so that we can perpetuate the clean signal, the Gaian signal, right? And stop perpetuating the kind of destructive patterns that are keeping us banging our heads against the wall. So thank you so much. This is Patrick Hayes. I'm excited for you to be an agent of the Gaian program to help us transform this planet to be more in alignment with what our true nature is. So thank you so much for tuning in. This is Patrick Hayes. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. Please share this video. If this video helped you, put a comment down below and share this video. Thanks so much, and I'll talk to you next time. One love.